What if I told you that a war was once declared against birds and lost? Or that an entire country elected a dog as mayor? Or that a man tried to sell the Eiffel Tower twice and succeeded both times? History isn't just kings, battles, and treaties. Sometimes it's utterly absurd, wildly hilarious, and so unbelievable you'll swear it's fiction. Yet every event in this article is 100% real, documented, verified, and stranger than any Hollywood script. Buckle up. We're diving into the weirdest corners of human history, where logic took a vacation and chaos reigned supreme. In 1932, Australia declared war on emus, yes, actual large flightless birds, because they were destroying crops in Western Australia, and shockingly, the birds won. The Emu War involved machine guns, military personnel, and thousands of rounds of ammunition, yet fewer than 1,000 emus were killed out of an estimated 20,000. Soldiers reported that the emus were bulletproof in their maneuverability, scattering at high speed and regrouping like seasoned guerrilla fighters. The government eventually abandoned the campaign, and farmers resorted to building fences, which also failed because emus simply jumped over them. To this day, Australians joke that the only war they ever lost was against birds armed with nothing but beaks and legs. In 1981, a California town named Idlewild held an election for mayor and elected a golden retriever named Mayor Max II. Max didn't run on policy promises, but on charm, tail wags, and community spirit. He served for 7 years before passing the title to another dog, Mayor Max III. His duties included greeting tourists, attending ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and signing proclamations with a paw print. The tradition continues today, proving that sometimes the best leaders are the ones who don't talk politics, just fetch sticks. Critics argue dogs make better mayors than humans because they never raise taxes or start wars. Just ask for belly rubs. In 1925, Victor Lustig, a Czech con artist, successfully sold the Eiffel Tower, not once but twice, to unsuspecting scrap metal dealers. He posed as a government official, claiming France could no longer afford maintenance and wanted to discreetly dismantle and sell it for scrap. His first victim, André Poisson, paid a hefty bribe and disappeared in shame rather than report the scam. Emboldened, Lustig returned months later and found another buyer, who also paid up before realizing he'd been duped. Lustig fled to America, where he later counterfeited money so well the Secret Service called him the man who printed millions. In 1859, the United States and Great Britain nearly went to war over a pig, literally. On San Juan Island, an American farmer shot a British-owned pig rooting in his potato patch, sparking what became known as the Pig War. Both nations sent warships and troops to the island, fortifying positions and preparing for battle, all over one very dead swine. No shots were fired between humans. Instead, diplomats negotiated for 13 years until Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm I arbitrated a peaceful resolution. Today, the island celebrates Pig War Days with reenactments, pork barbecues, and 0 casualties, except of course for the original porcine martyr. In 1904, during the St. Louis Olympics, marathon runner Fred Laws hitched a ride in a car for 11 miles, then jogged across the finish line first. He was initially awarded the gold medal and even posed for photos with Alice Roosevelt, daughter of President Theodore Roosevelt. When the truth came out, officials stripped him of the medal and banned him for life, though the ban was lifted a year later after he claimed it was a joke. Laws later won the 1905 Boston Marathon legitimately, proving redemption is possible, even if you once cheated via automobile. Modern marathon organizers now use GPS trackers and undercover marshals, all thanks to one man's joyride in a Model T. In 1674, 2 children in Amsterdam discovered skeletal remains in the hollow trunk of an old tree, later identified as the princes in the tower, Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury. The boys, Heirs to the English throne vanished in 1483 under mysterious circumstances, widely believed murdered by their uncle, Richard III. Their bones were interred in Westminster Abbey by order of King Charles II, but controversy persists over whether they were truly royal. DNA testing has been proposed multiple times, but the Church of England refuses to exhume them, citing respect for the dead. Historians still debate, were they murdered, escaped, hidden? The mystery endures, buried not in a tomb, but inside a tree. In 1815, Mount Tambora erupted in Indonesia, the largest volcanic explosion in recorded history, killing 71,000 people and altering global climate. The following year, 1816, became known as the Year Without a Summer, with snow falling in June and crops failing worldwide. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein during this gloomy summer while trapped indoors in Switzerland with Lord Byron and Percy Shelley. Famine spread across Europe and China, food riots erupted, and strange weather phenomena were blamed on divine wrath. Ironically, the disaster inspired Gothic literature, meteorology, and even early climate science, proving creativity can bloom in darkness. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Laika, a stray Moscow dog, into space aboard Sputnik 2, making her the first living creature to orbit Earth. Officials claimed she survived for days, but in reality, she died within hours from overheating and stress, a fact hidden for 45 years. Her sacrifice paved the way for human spaceflight, and monuments now honor her bravery across Russia. A Russian scientist later admitted, "We did not learn enough from this mission to justify the death of the dog." Laika's legacy lives on, not just in science, but as a symbol of innocence lost in the race for progress. In 1906, a Welshman named Thomas Griffin attempted to steal Stonehenge, yes, the 5,000-year-old megalithic monument, using ropes, pulleys, and brute force. He managed to topple one stone before being arrested and fined $10, equivalent to about $1,300 today. The damaged stone was re-erected in 1958, and Griffin's name faded into obscurity, remembered only as the man who tried to steal a national treasure. Authorities now monitor Stonehenge with CCTV and patrols, not for vandals, but specifically for Griffin copycats. Tourists still joke, "Don't blink, someone might try to load Stonehenge onto a flatbed truck." In 1783, Parisians panicked when strange airborne objects, later revealed to be hot air balloons, floated silently overhead. People screamed of flying monsters and demons. Mobs attacked balloons on landing, fearing invasion or witchcraft. The Montgolfier brothers, inventors of the balloon, had to reassure crowds they weren't summoning Satan, just defying gravity. Within months, balloonomania swept Europe. Aristocrats threw balloon-themed parties, and women wore balloon-shaped hats. Humanity's first steps toward flight began not with applause, but with pitchforks and prayers, a humble, hilarious launch. In 1945, a Japanese soldier named Hiru Onoda refused to believe Wdwt had ended and hid in the Philippine jungle for 29 years. He dismissed leaflets, newspapers, and radio broadcasts as Allied propaganda, convinced the war raged on. He survived by stealing rice, hunting wild game, and ambushing locals he mistook for enemy combatants. Only in 1974, when his former commander flew to the island and personally ordered him to stand down, did Onoda surrender in full uniform. He returned to Japan, a celebrity, wrote a memoir, and later moved to Brazil, still carrying his rifle cleaned and ready for action. In 1838, US Congressman Jonathan Silly was killed in a duel, not with pistols, but with rifles, at 80 yards, because he refused to accept a challenge with pistols. His opponent, Reppers William Graves, accepted the unusual terms and fatally shot Silly through the femoral artery. The outrage led Congress to pass a law banning dueling among its members. though enforcement was flexible. Dueling culture persisted in the South for decades, often over insults, debts, or political slights, proving honor sometimes costs more than life. Silly's last words, "Take me home." He was 34. In 1978, Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitlam was dismissed by the Governor-General, the only time in Australian history a sitting PM was fired. The constitutional crisis stemmed from budgetary deadlock, but rumours swirled of CIA involvement due to Whitlam's anti-Vietnam stance. Crowds gathered outside Parliament chanting, "We want Gough," while the Governor-General appointed opposition leader Malcolm Fraser as caretaker PM. Elections followed weeks later, and Fraser won. But the dismissal remains Australia's most controversial political moment. Historians still debate whether it was a necessary constitutional move or a quiet coup dressed in parliamentary robes. In 1870, a French gardener named Pierre Picot was allegedly imprisoned for years after being framed by jealous friends, inspiring Alexandre Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo. Upon release, he inherited a fortune from a dying cellmate, trained in combat, and spent decades exacting revenge on those who betrayed him. Though historians question how much is true, police archives in Nîmes contain records matching key elements of his story. Dumas claimed he based Edmond Dantes on Picard, turning real-life vengeance into literary legend. Truth, it seems, really is stranger than fiction, especially when prison turns you into a millionaire ninja. In 1923, jockey Frank Hayes won a horse race in New York, despite being dead. He suffered a fatal heart attack mid-race, but remained strapped in the saddle as his horse, Sweet Kiss, crossed the finish line first. Photographers captured the eerie image. Hayes slumped forward, mouth agape, arms limp, yet technically the winner. He remains the only jockey in history to win a race posthumously, a victory written in obituaries, not record books. Bookies reportedly paid out, honoring bets placed on the corpse who rode to glory. In 1959, 9 experienced hikers died mysteriously in Russia's Ural Mountains. Their tent slashed open from inside, bodies found barefoot in 30-degree snow. Dubbed the Dyatlov Pass incident, autopsies revealed bizarre injuries, crushed ribs, missing eyes, radiation traces, with no signs of struggle. Official reports blamed an unknown compelling force. Theories range from avalanches to secret weapons tests to Yeti attacks. In 2020, Russian authorities reopened the case and concluded an avalanche caused panic. But skeptics point to unexplained radiation and orange skin. The site remains a pilgrimage spot for conspiracy theorists, drawn to a cold case where science meets the supernatural. In 1814, a vat of fermenting beer burst in London, unleashing a 15-foot tidal wave that killed 8 people and destroyed 2 houses. The London beer flood occurred when a 22-foot-high wooden tub ruptured at Moo & Coas Brewery, sending 323,000 gallons of porter roaring through streets. Victims drowned in alcohol, survivors licked beer off walls, some reportedly drunk for days. The brewery avoided bankruptcy only after petitioning Parliament to refund $7,000 in lost beer taxes. Today, a plaque marks the site, and locals toast the tragedy with dark stouts every October. In 1916, a gorilla named Gargantua was exhibited by Ringling Brothers Circus as the world's most terrifying creature, behind inch-thick glass and armed guards. In reality, Gargantua was shy, hated crowds, and suffered from a facial scar caused by nitric acid thrown by a sailor as a baby. The circus exaggerated his ferocity, claiming he carried diseases that could wipe out humanity. Pure marketing genius. He became the highest-paid performer in America, earning $20,000 weekly, over $400,000 today, more than most movie stars. Gargantua's legacy? Proof that fear sells, even when your monster just wants to nap in peace. In 1965, Astronaut John Young smuggled a corned beef sandwich onto Gemini 3, the first food contraband in space. He offered half to Commander Gus Grissom, who took a bite before crumbs began floating everywhere, a major hazard in zero-G. NASA reprimanded Young, Congress held hearings, and future astronauts were limited to approved crumb-free space food. Young later walked on the moon and commanded the first space shuttle, but he's still remembered as the guy who snuck lunch into orbit. The sandwich is now legendary, a tasty rebellion against bureaucracy 160 miles above Earth. In 1850, a lion escaped from the Tower of London menagerie and wandered into a nearby pub, where patrons calmly finished their pints before alerting authorities. The lion was coaxed back with raw meat, and no one was harmed, though several claimed they punched the beast, likely after more ale. The incident prompted Parliament to shut down the royal menagerie, relocating animals to what became the London Zoo. Locals still tell tales of the pub that hosted a lion, proof the British will face danger, right after last orders. These stories remind us that history isn't just dates and doctrines, it's drunken lions, space sandwiches, emu generals and dead jockeys crossing finish lines. It's chaotic, hilarious, tragic, and profoundly human. We build empires and wage war over pigs. We elect dogs and sell monuments. We defy death, gravity, and common sense, often simultaneously. And that's what makes history unforgettable. Not its perfection, but its beautiful, bizarre absurdity. So next time you think the world makes no sense, remember, it never did. And thank goodness for that.